exceptional.
I've had to train to get really very, very proficient.
Gold medalist and Paralympic champion representing New Zealand.
You're always adjusting and adapting to conditions, and that's the thing that young players perhaps don't quite realise these days.
You're listening to the Hyundai High Performance Hour.
Christine, thank you very much for joining us once again. The R12 is the focus for our conversation this week and the work that you're doing there. But before we get to that, let's just recap a little if we can. We've got time to do that. Gee, you've had a wonderful and varied 20 years. It's almost unfair to ask you of what might be a highlight or two in amongst those amazing 20 years.
Well, first, let me just say it's a pleasure to be back on with you, Andrew, and to have an audience with your listeners. So I thank you for having me on again. And yes, it's been one of those rides that you really couldn't write if you wanted to. So I'm really grateful for the ups and downs, if you will, that come along with it. But it's been a lot of fun. It's been very challenging. It's been very difficult at times. And like any job, you have the moments that are not so much fun, which is when you're sitting, believe it or not, behind a desk and you're waiting sort of for the next gig, and you're working out the finances, and you're working with people and teams and doing all the not so fun work that comes along with any expedition and any business. But aside from that, it's been a lot of fun. There's been quite a bit of drama along with it as well along the way.
I guess your career also, Christine, is testament to everyone listening that if at first you don't succeed, then indeed you should try again. Because if you look at your very first scuba diving experience, that would have suggested that you would be anything but a scuba diver over your career.
Absolutely. That was a fun trip that I recall very vividly because I really thought I was going to not come back to the surface. It was a nighttime dive, and it was in the Bahamas, which, for all intents and purposes, is really some absolutely stunning, calm, clear water diving that I recommend anyone do. And this was just the first time out, and I was taken really much deeper than I should have been, and I certainly had no clue as to what I was doing. And I blindly went in, and ignorance is bliss, and sure enough, there were jellyfish, and everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. And it was a miserable experience, but it was very terrifying, as I think many people will experience in the water that just are having a bad time of it, first time or second time. It's really very terrifying. So I thought, well, this is just not meant to be at the moment. And then once I recuperated from that, because I had an inner ear issue and narcosis and all, and that lasted for a number of days, I thought about it, and I thought, that really wasn't so bad because it was so beautiful, and it really is something that I really have to try again before I say it's a no-go. And I waited about a year and a half, and I went back. And, again, it wasn't the best of situations to go out and do it because we had some kind of a storm. And I did it, and I loved it. I absolutely fell in love with the underwater flora and fauna and the fish and all that. And I guess the rest is history.
We should point out as well, I think it's well worthwhile for our listeners that yours was not a privileged background. We're not talking to someone who fell into these expeditions and this life of great adventure on the back of some great family wealth or fortune, and it was almost like, I'll go play in the ocean. You've had to fight and scrap for every cent that you've been able to put towards your life's work. What is it about your personality, Christine? What is it about your makeup that has seen you being so determined right throughout?
Well, it was really something that, for all intents and purposes, my mother just never, ever thought that or wanted me to go and really do something like this because it was going to be an inordinate amount of hard work to start your own business, much more so in the adventure travel industry where very few women were doing this in the 90s. And also there was the elements of safety and that life of adventure was not exactly glamorous or whatever you would call. For my mom, it was, it's very unladylike, and it's difficult, and it's just hard work. And I think for the most part, it is very much hard work, but such is life. And it's certainly building a business and building a brand requires 24/7 of your time, energy, and your finances. And that is something that I recommend for very few people. If you really have a vision and you have a passion, I strongly recommend that you follow that and be very clear about what you wish to attain, and also really sort of cut your losses at a certain point, which hindsight is 20/20, and I think in business you really you have to learn your lessons in whatever industry you're in, and you sort of take the hard knocks and you pick yourself up and you do it again. And I happen to be resolute in my wanting to achieve some success in this industry and with Mad Dog Expeditions, which I really believed in when I co-founded this with a very good friend and former partner. And he went on to start another company that was doing exploration for young kids. And so we both must have had the same, really wanted to stay in this industry and have this life of adventure, which, again, is not for everyone, but there's so many wonderful aspects to it that enrich your life and your spirit on so many levels that I think all the hard work and all the challenges are certainly, although they're not for everyone, I think they're certainly worthwhile. Looking back on, as you said, everything that I've put into it, it's been worthwhile, and there certainly is that payoff at the end of the day, I think, on so many different levels, for me personally.
Do you see your role as having changed over the last 20 years, and that perhaps you're now part environmentalist, part explorer, but also part historian? And I guess I say that with particular regard to what we're about to talk about with the USS R-12.
I would say yes, and I never saw myself in that way. I certainly have enjoyed and taken what I do and what we've done as a company and as a team personally, and certainly there's a responsibility that goes along with the areas of the world that I've been privileged to see and visit and the people that I've worked with, which certainly involve conservation and sustainability and all the sort of the key words that have now come into the forefront and to our vernacular that people are recognizing are really important, and the younger generations are beginning to see are really very vital to the future. And I guess I did and have played a role in that, and I think it's a wonderful thing because I see the importance, especially as a woman, for younger girls and young children that look at you and think, well, you're not my idea necessarily physically of what I would think is out there, doing these things and being so physical and being able to come into our classroom, let's say, and discuss it and show us that you go out and do these things, but they can relate to you. And I think that's so important as far as being able to educate and teach and to be a role model, is to let people see that, sort of if you can do it, they can also do it. And it really has been one of those situations, again, that I just feel very privileged to sort of play my part, if you will.
Auckland Fork Truck Hire. The hint's in the name. They hire out fork trucks. Big ones, small ones, electric ones, gas ones. Forklifts for smaller jobs, forklifts for the mothers of all jobs. They also sell, service and repair fork trucks. Really, if you need to lift stuff for an hour or for years, Auckland Fork Truck Hire are your first and best place to see. There's even a 24-hour breakdown service. Auckland Fork Truck Hire sales and service, lifting your business to a greater height. 387 Nielsen Street, Penrose.
Hi, Paul from Shawmount. Shawmount still have the best range of brackets and prices available in New Zealand. We simply cannot be beaten on the range and the pricing of LED, projector, plasma or LCD mounts. We've got brackets from 19-inch TVs through to 75-inch TVs in stock. Shawmount is a locally owned company. All advice on mounting your LED, plasma and projector is simply a phone call away. Shawmount.co.nz. Shawmount.co.nz. You can be sure if it's Shawmount.
The Mad Butcher needs an area manager. Join New Zealand's largest franchised meat retail chain. This Auckland-based role will support 12 stores, a territory predicted to grow. You have proven skills in retail butchery management, ideally with multi-store or supermarket sector experience. Technical butchery knowledge and strong commercial acumen is essential. Interested? Send your CV to michael@madbutcher.co.nz.
Yeah, you just can't beat a Mad Butcher's meat.
Radio Sport and Bionic presents the All Blacks against France with Steve Hansen.
Do the French ask for French fries in France?
I don't know.
You don't seem to know anything. What's wrong with you, mate?
I'm not French.
Oh, that'd explain it.
Saturday night, 7:35, the third test, live from Yarrow Stadium.
Down the right-hand corner.
The All Blacks against France, live on Radio Sport.
Join us, it'll be fun.
The Hyundai High Performance Hour with Andrew Dewhurst. Proudly brought to you by Hyundai New Zealand.
Christine Dennison is our guest on the Hyundai High Performance Hour as we talk with the co-founder and president of Mad Dog Expeditions. Further details, CV, background, link to websites, all available from our website and, of course, our Facebook page. If you just check out hph.co.nz. Well, Christine, the focus for our conversation on this occasion is it's a rather interesting one. It's almost one of those boys' own stories. We're talking wartime. We're talking about a submarine, and we're talking about a very sad story of a submarine that was lost and until very recent times remained undiscovered. We're talking of the USS R12, which was, you go back to 1918, I think, when she was first commissioned, launched in 1919, but then, of course, was lost sometime later. Can you just fill us in, first of all, of your first interest? I mean, clearly there must have been some background as to why you and I think your husband, Tim Taylor, first went looking for the R12.
Well, it was interesting. I had been working with Tim, whom I have known professionally for many years, and we were not married at the time, but had been working on a project that summer. And I had to go back to New York, and he was based out of Key West, and his business is based in there. So he went on, and we were looking for this. I had to leave, and he stayed on in search of this. And he called me, and I had just left, and he said, I found it. And I knew that I had, we sort of touched on it, but we had been looking for this, and we'd hit on it, and he was able to get the first images, which were just sonar images, and he found it. And from that point on, this has been really our life, and I started doing a lot of the sort of the background, the research on it, which was fascinating. And part of the story really was that at this point, it's become, it's really taken on a life of its own, and in part because this was a submarine that was lost during wartime. It's 600 feet with 42 men. It has 40 American servicemen and 2 Brazilian officers on board. That has been missing for 68 years at the time, and very few people really even knew it was off the coast of their town. And the families that I started to research, and I contacted the Navy, and we came across so many barriers, from the Navy really not wanting to acknowledge that we found it, to wanting us to sort of keep it quiet, because if we released it, then families may be up in arms and want, who knows what the families would want. So it was appeasing a lot of different parties that I was, at that time, the project coordinator for this. And so I found it very interesting, as it started out, to really have to appease, again, the different parties at play. We started working under Navy permits when we pressed, and we still are. And we went back on expedition to film, and we're the only ones at this point that have the the underwater footage of this sub at depth, which is remarkably intact, and it looks very serene, and yet it is a war grave. And we are planning another expedition at the end of this summer to go back and continue mapping the site and additional documentation for it. What has been very interesting is that we have located one of the survivors, a 90-year-old gentleman that we've been working with through the past 2 years. Children, we have about 4 children whose father is entombed on the sub. We have a 96-year-old widow who has been. These are just amazingly generous families that have taken us into their homes, that have shared stories, personal photos, and I've been producing a documentary, which we hope to finish, to tell the story of not only these men, but the families and the mystery behind her thinking, because this has been one of the most fascinating aspects of the find, is that, and going through all the naval archives and the declassified documents in Washington and through personal stories and letters, there's a tremendous mystery as to why she sank. And this is sort of unraveling, and through the work that we're doing with our robot, and hopefully we'll have some answers for all involved as to really what caused this sub to sink, taking 42 men to their grave.
Because the information that's commonly available would suggest that it was a routine dive, that they were not in a battle situation, that this was a routine dive, and that an alarm was sounded very quickly, and that there were issues with the forward battery compartment beginning to flood, and essentially the submarine was lost very quickly in a matter of seconds, just sunk to the bottom of the ocean.
It was lost within 15 seconds. We had 5 men that were on the conning tower that were washed off the sub that survived, and the stories are fairly consistent with exactly that they were just that they had heard. They didn't hear anything sounding when they were on the surface, but they were told that the sub was flooding, and then it pretty much sank right from under them. We do have footage that may show otherwise. We also have some stories that were told a little differently. The inquest also has the information doesn't match up, is what we're finding. And one of the things that's very important is that during wartime, there was a lot of information that was, even though it's been declassified, there was still a lot of things that weren't discussed. They were operating 11 miles offshore in Key West. There were a lot of U-boats in this area. This was a training submarine from World War I that had been recommissioned for World War II. We also had the men on board. They all had to be trained on these subs before going out to see battle in the Pacific. So these submariners that were all a volunteer corps, and these were highly trained men already that had been called back into service. So these men were really pretty advanced already that were training on the sub. So we're not exactly sure what they were training on. They were doing routine ops, yes, but this is part of that mystery as to why it would have sunk, what causes the sub to sink so quickly. We're working with a submarine expert. We're working with forensic experts to try and solve what we're seeing on our footage. It sort of aligns with what we're reading in the inquest and what we're reading from personal letters and what we're getting from family members that the survivors were saying to their families. And so it's really very interesting. It's sort of solving a puzzle back in time, and yet it's very bittersweet because the families that we've been meeting with, and we're meeting all of them at this point, are really very... They're still grieving. They've had close to 70 years where they were not in touch with each other because they were kept apart from the Navy. They did not know each other. They have been missing their loved ones, their fathers, their cousins, their brothers. These are elderly. A lot of family members are elderly at this point. And they're just really wonderfully generous and kind people that are very appreciative that we're able to bring awareness to a submarine and family members that have been forgotten. And I think whether or not they were in battle, I think during that time, that generation was really a lost generation, and I believe they were all heroes. They were all doing this during a time where the world lost so many servicemen.
When it rains, it's good news, man. It means the cold, refreshing drinks are on the house.
If you have a flat bitumen roof on your house, Mohan Roofing have a special coating that not only lengthens the life of the roof, but makes rainwater perfectly safe for drinking water.
It's cool, man.
And it's environmentally friendly. Drink water straight off your roof. Mohan Roofing. Go to mohan.co.nz for details.
Cool Mohan, man.
Honey, I just read an article that claims the first person to live to 150 years old is alive today.
Really? Oh, imagine us being in retirement for 80 years.
Maybe it's time to call NZ Invest. NZ Invest show people how to build a portfolio of rental houses. The houses are all in Auckland, brand new, quality construction, and they even manage the tenants for you. If you're ready, call NZ Invest today. Call 0800 NZ Invest. That's 0800 694 683.
Hi, Paul from Shawmount. Shawmount still have the best range of brackets and prices available in New Zealand. We simply cannot be beaten on the range and the pricing of LED, projector, plasma or LCD mounts. We've got brackets from 19-inch TVs through to 75-inch TVs in stock. Shawmount is a locally owned company. All advice on mounting your LED, plasma and projector is simply a phone call away. Shawmount.co.nz. Shawmount.co.nz. You can be sure if it's Shawmount.
It's 9:31, you're with Andrew Clay. It's the Hyundai High Performance Hour, and what we've got playing is a interview recorded slightly earlier with Andrew Dewhurst and a woman called Christine Dennison, who's a diver and explorer of some repute, talking about the expedition to discover a American submarine that's been lost at sea for up to 70 years. This is Andrew Dewhurst talking to Christine Dennison.
This has almost become, I guess, Christine, something of a poster story, for want of a better term, for other situations like this, because the R12 is far from an isolated case of a submarine disappearing during wartime.
No, I agree. What is very interesting about this one is clearly we found it in U.S. waters. It's the only submarine to have been lost within the 48 states within the continental U.S. We had lost, the U.S. lost there were 52 missing subs. This is the sixth submarine to have been found, and the only one within the U.S. within the continental U.S. So the other subs that are missing are mostly in the Pacific, and we're not sure the depth. Some could be a lot deeper, some might be shallower. We're investigating that as well because it's fascinating, but this sub being so close to shore and having really no history in terms of, it's sort of a blip on the radar screen to Key West being a fairly small town in the Gulf of Mexico, if you will, and it being so close to shore. There's a naval base in town, and yet there's hardly anything. There's no real tribute. I think there's a little chapel with a little plaque, but there's nothing. In the local newspaper on the 70th anniversary, which is a major anniversary, I think, they had on this day in history, and they listed 5 things, and one of them was the sinking of the R12. And this is in their own hometown, where they have a major loss of life in a submarine that's off of their shore. So I can appreciate the hurt and the pain that the families have been living with all these years, is that these men have really been forgotten. And I can really feel their pain. I understand in meeting with them how they're reliving it as if it had just happened. And I've grown very sensitive because I think everyone can equate to some kind of loss of a loved one and feeling that the world forgot or that they died in vain in some way and that no one cares. And here we are, that we had a 70th anniversary recently, and in that local paper in Key West, there's just barely a mention. And so I'm hoping that with our find and our continued expedition and documentary, that the raising awareness and paying tribute to these 42 men will do some justice to this loss of life, and hopefully also will just bring awareness to the continued loss of life that's ongoing. And I think if that can be accomplished, just to make people more sensitive every time we lose servicemen and women, I think that's something that you really can't put a price on.
Christine, from a technical and a practical point of view, when Tim and the exploration team discovered the R12 back in May 2011, what then were some of the challenges that you faced? I understand that a state-of-the-art underwater robot was deployed. I mean, what were the issues that you faced, and what depths were we talking? Just talk us through some of those practical things that you had to overcome.
The first fix, when we went out to actually capture the underwater images, we went out last August, so that would have been August of 2012. We had an underwater robot, an ROV, built to spec for this expedition we had it delivered June of last year, 2012. And that took several months to have built to specs for this particular expedition. And what we did is we investigated, obviously, the depths and the currents and the cameras that we would want to use. And we're using very, very high-tech robotics and cameras, which are akin to what James Cameron would use, but on a much, much lower scale, because we don't have those funds available. But we're using very similar, the same cameras. They're high-definition cameras that are placed on this robot to go to depth. And so we're able to capture this very, very clear imagery underwater, and we're at 600 feet. And so in waiting for the robot to be built, we then had it delivered. We were all in Key West. And then we had to train on it and test, and I was the camera person for the robot. So we have an ROV operator. We have a full crew that goes out. And so there was a lot of training involved prior to going out. And then we have weather issues. So there's been a lot of lead-up to actually getting out to site. And, of course, when you're out, like any expedition, over the site, you're going to have currents, and we had all that. We had terrible weather. We were right in the middle of hurricane season, so we had to wait out a lot of days. And it was one of those, hurry up and wait situations, which we have a great team, and people understand the nature of expeditionary work, so you're sitting around, and there's always something to do. And then, of course, the payoff is you get to site, and you get what you need in terms of your images.
You're listening to Andrew Dewhurst interview Christine Dennison and the Hyundai High Performance Hour, talking about the discovery of the USS R12, an American submarine lost at sea for about 68 years, and the recovery of that. Don't forget to answer the quiz question on Facebook to be in to win. This week's question is, what is the name of Christine Dennison's expedition company? What is the name of Christine Dennison's expedition company? If you go to the HPH Facebook page, like and answer the question, you could be in to win a book package. We'll have more of the interview with Andrew Dewhurst and Christine Dennison after this.
The Mad Butcher needs an area manager. Join New Zealand's largest franchised meat retail chain. This Auckland-based role will support 12 stores, a territory predicted to grow. You have proven skills in retail butchery management, ideally with multi-store or supermarket sector experience. Technical butchery knowledge and strong commercial acumen is essential. Interested? Send your CV to michael@madbutcher.co.nz.
Yeah, you just can't beat a Mad Butcher's meat.
Counties Toyota for the drive of your life.
If you're after a used Toyota, Counties Toyota have an absolutely huge range to choose from.
Counties Toyota for the drive of your life.
From Yaris to Land Cruiser and everything in between, Toyota Financial Services finance available.
Counties Toyota for the drive of your life.
Takanini and Pukekohe.
If your goal is to get into your first home before the end of the year, now's the time to know the right strategies. Theblueprint.co.nz can help. Time to find the right answers. Text OWN to 244. That's OWN to 244. Proudly brought to you by Oka Business.
Jake Bugg is topping charts and selling out gigs around the world.
Jump on that lightning bolt.
Get the album now from JB Hi-Fi for only $16.99. Jake Bugg at JB Hi-Fi now.
You know that you can trust a bike from Avanti Plus.
The massive bike sale at Avanti Plus is on now. It's a huge end-of-season run-out with Avanti and Scott bikes priced to clear. But with these savings, stock and sizes are limited, so don't miss out. These savings are enormous, so hurry in today. For locations, check out AvantiPlus.com.
You know that you can trust a bike from Avanti Plus.
Radio Sport and Bionic presents the All Blacks against France with Steve Hansen.
Do the French ask for French fries in France?
I don't know.
You don't seem to know anything. What's wrong with you, mate?
I'm not French.
Oh, that'd explain it.
Saturday night, 7:35, the third test, live from Yarrow Stadium.
Down the right-hand corner.
The All Blacks against France, live on Radio Sport.
Join us, it'll be fun.
Radio Sport is passion for cricket.
Caught at mid-wickets. Back over his head. Hits that one well, and it's gone for 4. Oh, and all over the top of it. Solid in defence. As New Zealand get their first wickets.
The most powerful name in sport, Radio Sport. The Hyundai High Performance Hour. Proudly brought to you by Hyundai New Zealand.
Christine Dennison, our guest on the Hyundai High Performance Hour, as we talk about the discovery of and the documentary that is being made about this discovery of the USS R-12, which disappeared, sank shortly after noon on the 12th of June, 1943. And as we've heard already from Christine, an amazing number. And this shocked me. 52, I think, Christine, you mentioned, 52 submarines lost. And this is the only one in American waters. But it is incredible, isn't it, to think of that number of, I guess they are graves. They are grave sites at the bottom of the oceans around the world. 52 missing subs.
They are, and as such, we are working under government, under Navy permits, and as such, we are subject to those laws. We do not touch the wreck. Our ROV hovers over the wreck, so every image that we're capturing, the video that we're capturing, we are not touching, we're not disturbing the site in any way. And in doing such, we are working under archaeological permits as well. That, in doing all this, we are extremely careful and respectful, knowing that it's a war grave. And there's an eeriness. There certainly is an eeriness to this. When you see it, and you know what you're looking at and what you're photographing and where you are. And it's certainly a very bittersweet sign. And it's really quite, it's a very emotive expedition, I will say, certainly for me, and I think for all involved, because we want to get back and do the right thing and continue to map this and hopefully find out what caused this to sink, and then whether or not we see, a hatch that's open, a torpedo tube that's flooded, or a gash in the side. We don't know. But we are working with a forensic team and hopefully get some answers to this. But it really is a very powerful statement of wartime as well, when we see and know that there are 42 men entombed on the submarine at 600 feet. And yet it looks very serene with the sandy bottom. And there are some fish and some corals that have grown over it. So if you were to come upon this, you would think, this looks just like a fabulous submarine or a wreck. And so you wouldn't necessarily, let's say, 50 years from now, someone would recognize it must be some kind of a war wreck. Because of this, we have also applied and been granted an additional permit to actually place a memorial plaque near the site that actually, with the names, we've yet to decide that we're going to work with the families on this. So as part of an additional future expedition, we will be working to map the site and collect data that will allow us to eventually place a plaque there that will actually identify this as a war grave of the R-12. So in the future, with the way technology is going, you never know what and who will be down there on different, whether on their own private subs or on scuba. But it's nice that we are planning to be able to place a plaque down there with government permits, and also have another memorial plaque somewhere for families topside.
So
that's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, and listen, let's make this very clear that there's never any thought of this being a recovery mission of any sorts, that the submarine will remain untouched and where it is.
Absolutely. It's a war grade. It belongs to the Navy, and it should never be disturbed. I believe that most of the family members also feel that way, and I believe it is just submariners or submariners believe that if you die on your sub, that is your final resting place. That is your grave, and they would never want to be disturbed.
So where to now, Christine, in terms of the project? Obviously, it's been something of a labour of love now for you and for Tim for a good couple of years, and is occupying a great deal, if not all of your time at present. What next in terms of the project, and where do you hope for this to take you and the story to, in terms of a conclusion?
Well, I'm still working with finishing up some of the writing and additional editing and footage to finish up the documentary and funding for it, and then release that either through as a documentary piece on the expedition to date. We are returning to site on a subsequent expedition later on this summer, sometime this year, weather permitting. We're looking at the times and the weather, which has been terrible at present, to continue the mapping and the collection of data. And that'll be sort of phase 2 of the expedition, because we still have more to do on the site. And finish that up, which is we still have at least another year just to sort of wrap this up. And it's still working with the families to finish up the project, if you will, which will be the final placement of this plaque and tribute to these men.
And for people in this part of the world that want to follow the story, and indeed perhaps they can contribute, Christine, this is, as you say, this is not being funded by a private billionaire benefactor here. So I imagine that you're working just as hard to raise the funds as you are to develop the story.
Well, we are. We've been working through Kickstarter, which is a crowdsourced fundraising platform, which has been wonderful. And Kickstarter, it's Kickstarter.com, and it's the R12 documentary project. It's on my website. And the nice thing about that is that if someone gives $1, it helps, because it goes towards the whole project. So if 1 million people decide to give $1, everybody is joined in the project. Everybody gets a piece of the project, and we do have different levels, and people that contribute, everyone gets something as a backer. And hopefully at the end of this, the film will get the funding, and it will be produced and will get released, and hopefully we'll go from there with where we can place it and premiere it and present it. So I think from what we have so far, and we've done some previews of it, it's a fabulous look at history and these people, the families, and it's again, World War II encompasses the entire world, and it just happens to focus on a discovery that I think gets everybody thinking, because it took place in everyone's backyard, and I think so many people can certainly relate to a generation. We have grandparents, we have great-grandparents, and I think it's just a wonderful reminder to a lot of us that war is something that we're fortunate in many ways that it hasn't touched our lives the way it did for many generations ago, and may it not come again that way.
That was Andrew Dewhurst with an interview recorded earlier with Christine Dennison, who is is a diver who is part of head of a team that's discovered the USS R-12 American submarine lost at sea back in the Second World War. I'll remind you, don't forget to answer the quiz on Facebook. Be in to win. This week's question is, What was the name, or what is the name of Christine Dennison's expedition company? What is the name of Christine Dennison's expedition company? Go to the HBH Facebook page, like, and answer the question to be in to win a book package that we have as a prize for that. That was the Hyundai High Performance Hour with Andrew Dewhurst. You're with Andrew Clay at the moment. We'll be back after this to talk more about sports.
Winter's the time to fine-tune your game for the new season. Who better to instruct you than Adam Scott, Darren Clark and Jesper Parnevik, whose tuition advice features in the June issue of The Cut magazine. Look for great interviews with Steve Williams, Mark Brown, Gary Player, Laurie Maines and new star Caden Nearho.
Radio Sport and Bionic presents the All Blacks against France with Steve Hansen.
Do the French ask for French fries in France?
I don't know.
You don't seem to know anything. What's wrong with you, mate?
I'm not French.
Oh, that'd explain it.
Saturday night, 7:35, the third test, live from Yarrow Stadium.
Down the right-hand corner.
The All Blacks against France, live on Radio Sport.
Join us, it'll be fun.
Passion for rowing starts here.
Radio Sport. To the line, it's New Zealand! The New Zealand pair, taken by a whisker.
New Zealand's only 24/7 sports radio. Radio Sport. It's Andrew Clay. This is Sport Lately. Sport After Dark. Radio Sport.
You are with Andrew Clay. It's 9:51 at the conclusion of the Hyundai High Performance Hour. We're going to get back onto more broader sporting talkback. So feel free to text us on 5009. I wouldn't call us now. Wait till after the sports news and weather at the top of the hour. But feel free then to give us a call on 0800 Talk Sport, 0800 82 55 77. The topics being, well, top of the list is the Sky losing the rights to the EPL. This has been a hot topic for the first hour, and I dare say will be again. Your thoughts on having it on the internet? What would you pay for it? Has Sky been complacent with their sport? Would you keep Sky? All those kind of angles. And there's just a lot of speculation at the moment. I'm not sure how it's going to all pan out. I'm sure a lot of us aren't. Other topics, of course, is the NBA Finals. Tremendous Game 6. It's now 3-3 between the San Antonio Spurs and the Miami Heat. Junior All Blacks losing in the semi-finals to England. The Lions losing to the Brumbies. And, of course, the US Open, which is a couple of days ago now. Or any other topic you wish to talk about, text us now, 5009, but call us after the news, sport and weather.